Okay, kia ora everybody. Welcome to Doc Edge Schools. We are going to wait on a couple of teachers. We're looking forward to hosting Michelle Burstall from the Auckland University Psychology Department, as well as Kit Haynes from Kelston Boys High School. So, yeah, we'll kick into it, but we'll just wait for those people to arrive. Uh, Today we are showing the Forum, which is a very insightful look into the World Economic Forum, which is often operated in quite um, a hidden way, and they haven't been super excited about people knowing what they do or who's turning up. And um, there are a lot of world leaders and there are a lot of business leaders who attend to network and to do deals and to look at how they can boost not only the economies of their individual countries, but to do international corporate deals. And while trade is good, it's this exact criticism of the lack of external voices being heard. So, yeah, this is what gets to the heart of the documentary. Is what's changed in the last couple of years is that the director, Professor Klaus Schwab, has opened things up. He's given director Marcus Vetter some unvetted access, so he can get in and show some of the workings behind the scenes. It may seem like it's completely open, but I'm guaranteeing that there were some rules and regulations around what could be filmed and what couldn't be filmed. You'll see in the documentary that we have Greenpeace invited to talk with some of the delegates, and Greta Thunberg, who rose to fame through the student strike for climate. She also brings a delegation, and they put some of these issues on the table for the international delegates to discuss. You've seen the film, Alicia. This is Alicia from Doc Edge Schools. What did you think of it? Did you the first time you watched it, were there any surprises? Was there anything you didn't know?
Yeah, I think the whole thing was a surprise for me. I didn't really know, kind of didn't really know anything about the World Economic Forum before I watched this documentary. So yeah, I thought it was really interesting, like the gathering of so many like powerful people and things that they talk about. Really made me think about how genuine leaders are when they talk about being committed to the environment. um, Especially when money is involved. So, yeah, yeah, I mean, as a filmmaker, I found it interesting how much access they did have. Um, but yeah, then also as a human of the world, I thought it was really interesting how some really huge decisions can be made over a dinner table. Um, so that I think that particularly shocked me was that you'd have like four or five really powerful people at a dinner table and they just know so much more than other people and make huge decisions. Yeah, over dinner.
Yeah. Well,
Felt
we're
good.
lucky enough to have a speaker afterwards, Mike Smith, who has been keeping a careful eye on the climate change situation from a Māori point of view. So, what's noticeable at these meetings is that it's only the leaders who are making decisions for everybody else. So there's no democratic accountability, and it's particularly people living in these areas whose voices aren't heard at these meetings who are affected. So Mike has been. I'm not sure. I think he's currently in. We're going to find out from Mike afterwards. He's taking some of the more well-known oil companies to international criminal court, and he's also taking our government to court. So that's a little bit controversial, but we're going to find more about that afterwards. But today's session, and in fact all of our sessions, are brought to you by Ray Foundation, who have generously given us the funding to continue these conversations and to listen to a variety of different points of view after showing all of these films. So we're very grateful to the Ray Foundation and everyone at Doc Edge for making this possible. So, Alicia, if I can ask you to put the link, boom, there it is, Schools Doc Edge.
Oh.
It's like you've read my mind.
Boom.
Um, if you're a teacher and you're watching this now, I believe Michelle, Kit, if you can hear us, go ahead and click this link um, and hover your cursor over the Play Now button. Make sure that you're signed up already, and if you haven't signed up, just email Alicia there. Alicia, if you can put your email address in the chat box, and we'll get you set up, and we'll walk you through any tech issues. But for the moment, hover your cursor over the Play Now button, and when I say go, we'll push play together, and we'll rejoin for the Q&A session. 3, 2, 1, go! Cool. So credits have finished rolling at my end. Um, yeah, Alicia, if you want to rejoin when you get a second, that would be great. But yeah, we were hoping Mike Smith would be available to join us here, but I think he's maybe got caught up in another meeting. Is that right, Alicia?
Yeah, I think so.
But that's all good. I mean, we've watched the movies a couple of times now, haven't we? So
Yeah.
it's every time we watch, there's another layer in there. And I mean, what strikes me is they seem to be aware of the problems of environmental degradation, and the need for systemic change, not just the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff kind of stuff. But it was pointed out that there's been a lot of talk over a lot of years, but the action is slow to come. So I'm interested in what your thoughts are, Alicia. It's like, do you think that there's a way that in a globalized society that change can happen from the top and it trickles down, or do you think it more comes from realigning how we do things in our own communities and set examples upwards and outwards?
Yeah, well, that being like the 30th time that I've watched the film, I think that it takes both. I think for real change to come, it'll probably end up being like us at the lower bottom, and like communities like grassroots level, and like causing disruption for the people in the big corporations, etc. Because like even just today, I was learning about how TikTokers and K-pop fans bought fake tickets for a Trump rally with no intention of showing up, and so it was pretty empty. I think they bought like hundreds and thousands, or they registered hundreds of thousands of people who are never going to go. So yeah, I think that yeah, on a grassroots level, and like in a lot of different creative ways, it'll take just disruption. I think that a lot of people are already setting an example, and the corporations are just like, oh yeah, they'll add it into their lingo, and they'll say X, Y, Z, but I think that it'd actually take yeah, disruption for change to
Well, I mean,
happen.
on that point of technology, which seems kind of like in the cloud, almost, really ethereal, for a start, is now having real world impacts. Do you think that? I mean, they made some good points about how financing companies and entrepreneurs to look at ocean cleanup, for instance, employing some technology about tracking where the waste is, using technology to find where the currents are taking this heap of awful plastic and waste that humans create, but also then how to mitigate that. And same with oil spills. There's if we continue with the kind of industry that we have, do you think that there's a global technological, those technological solutions are viable?
Yeah, in some ways I do. I definitely think they're great. I'm not saying they're not, but then I also think irreversible things are happening, such as like in Australia with ancient sites being blown up. There's no getting that back. And with islands in the Pacific, specifically like Tuvalu, you know, if they can't get back the meters that they've already lost of land, But I definitely think that there are ways to help stop it, for
Mm,
sure. So, and I think that like maybe a controversial opinion, but like with countries being in lockdown, like because of COVID, that showed that actually if like big change came from the government, the government made us stay home, not use our cars, etc. And that we saw evidence of that being helpful all over the place. So, but I think because I saw that some startups had made like these contraptions that look like really big circles that just float through and like pick up all the rubbish and stuff. Brilliant.
yeah.
I love that. That's cool. But but then again, some things are irreversible, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I mean that's a good point, and this is why we were hoping to have Mike with us, and hopefully he can speak to this in the next session or this session if he can join us. Is that often in these kind of International Monetary Fund, World Trade Organization, and the World Economic Forum, there's not a lot of Indigenous voices being heard. It's mostly about what commercial deals can we do, and then somewhat impose this on the world without having the proper design thinking of if you like the the consumer at some point is all of us, and we've got to
Yeah.
point out what works and what doesn't. And for a lot of Indigenous communities, particularly Pacific Island communities, where their actual land is getting encroached by rising sea levels, this is a huge deal. This is a way of life that's disappearing.
Oh, for sure. And I also found it really interesting re-listening to Klaus Schwab's response to Greta Thunberg's letter, and I think it shows a really big divide in like mindsets where Klaus probably genuinely thinks that he's doing good, but whereas Greta's like, this is a state of emergency. So, Klaus is like, in the future, I think actually a lot gets put on Gen Z, because everyone's like, oh, we believe in the young people in the next generation. And I do too, but, that doesn't mean that we just be like, oh, it's up to the young people.
Mm. No, I'm
Yeah.
I'm of a generation where the buck got passed to me, and then I did everything that I could, and then kind of got disheartened about how much resistance there was to actually acknowledging not only climate change, but everything about pollution and the byproduct of unfettered industry. Um, that it was like nobody's listening, and they're hiding behind these walls. So, I mean, from my perspective, it's really good to see a behind the scenes look at what they're talking about and who they're
Yeah.
interacting with, but it still feels like a lot of talk and not much action. Although, I can see small amounts of action, but you're right. This state of emergency and what Greta said is, we've got to act like the world is on fire because it is, and that's a literal statement with the burning of the Amazon. Some of that was lit deliberately to clear farmland,
Yeah.
to raise cattle, to make your hamburgers. There's a direct correlation between what we consume in the Western world and the environmental impacts as well.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
I'm keen to hear more from young people. So yeah, if there are young people in the audience here who want to ask some questions, I know that these are big questions, these are big issues. Teachers are welcome to type in the chat box, or if you've got a question and you'd like to come up on camera, there's this icon here above the chat box, which will bring you up into the room.
Uh,
But sorry, you go, Alicia.
yeah, I just was going to say, circling back to your earlier questions, I definitely think there's things we can do as individuals to help, because I know for me, there was a point where in one of my households, there's just so much plastic, like plastic bottles everywhere. And I was kind of like, oh, I just kind of got to that point where I was like, oh man, like probably definitely need to um, not create so much waste. And I know that a lot of people, like a friend of mine, her daughter's 5, and her daughter refuses to take lunch to school unless it's in like a glass, something that could be recycled packaging, or else she won't eat it. She won't eat her lunch if her sandwiches have Glad wrap over it. She's like, I'm not taking this. But yeah, so there are plenty of different things that we can do to contribute, but they're also really huge contributors to pollution. So yeah.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that, is that taking a holistic look, there are things we can do on an individual level, on a family or a household level, in a community level, in a national level. If there's something you're unhappy about the way that the government is approaching some of these issues, get in touch with an MP, put some pressure on. And at an international level, where we have even fewer options for making our voices heard with these larger meetings where decisions are being made on our behalf, write a letter, get involved, be a Greta, jump a train, try and get a panel spot.
Absolutely. My MP, I live in a Jacinda Ardern's electorate, and so I have written a few emails, letters to Jacinda about what's on my mind, and I usually get an email back from her assistant with like a brief description on what, how Jacinda feels about a certain issue that I'm bringing up. But yeah, it's always good to get in contact, and a lot of people watching will probably be able to vote soon. So there's a lot of things. We've got a lot of options, and if you can find it hard to choose an option, choose all of them. That's what I do.
Now I think I can see a joiner in the audience. If that's you, Mike, there should be a little icon like this to speak. If you want to join us, just click on that, and Alicia will get you in the room. But if you're a teacher, you're welcome to ask any questions as well, either in the chat box or and we'll get you on camera to speak.
Oh, there we go. It is Mike. So Mike, when I accept your request, it's actually going to take you out of here into a camera and microphone test, and then you'll be able to come back. So that might take like 20 or 30 seconds for you to do, and then we'll see in a little bit.
Oh, well, it's good. It's great to have Mike joining with us here, because he's been at the forefront of Indigenous resistance to oil and fossil fuel extraction. Also joining up with Greenpeace to resist the likes of OMV, and I believe Petrobras. He might be able to correct me on that once he's in the room. But yeah, we're looking forward to, firstly, how Mike perceives the issues, and then what action is being taken to remedy the problem.
Hi, Mike.
Hi.
Kia ora. You might have an icon that kind of looks like a magnifying glass with two handles. Here we go. Oh.
Tēnā koe, Mike.
Kia ora.
Tēnā koe, tēnā.
Nau mai haere mai ki tēnei whare matihiko, ipurangi, ki te kōrero mō ēnei taka. Yeah, I'd like to welcome Mike Smith here, who has generously given of his time to come and talk to some of these issues, which we're talking about in the forum. And previous to you arriving, Mike, Alicia and I were talking about the lack of Indigenous representation at these international global hui. And yeah, we'd love to hear your whakaaro. We'd love to hear your thoughts on these matters.
Oh, well, ka mihi kia koutou katoa, hakarongo mai nei ki tēnei o wēnei kōrero, te pūtake o te ao nei, called climate change, e take nunui. So congratulations to the organising team that put this webinar together. And my apologies for being a little bit late. Maybe one of the reasons why you don't hear too many Indigenous voices is that we have notoriously sketchy transport systems, and they continuously break down. That's what happened to me morning, so
Oh no,
apologies for a little bit late. Yeah,
Ka
but
pai,
we got that sorted.
it's good to have you here with us now.
So, how's it been going this morning? Unfortunately, I was unable to join until now. So, where's the conversation got to?
So we've shown the movie, and we're just having a cordial basically about what we thought of the film, the filmmaking, and the issues. And we're always interested in getting a variety of perspectives. We heard from in the movie, we heard from Greenpeace, and we heard from Greta Thunberg as the counter voice, if you like, to the voices of business leaders and world leaders, and how they get together to make the world a better place. But I know, like, fossil fuel extraction and burning fuel, CO2 emissions, and all of this kind of thing often takes place um, without much consultation of local people, and that missing voice of local people at a global level is a real problem. But from what I've been noticing about your mahi there, Mike, is that you're taken OMV to the International Criminal Court, or you're perhaps prosecuting the government on issues of climate change as well. We'd love to hear about your mahi there, and why you think this is important at this stage of the global climate change crisis.
Good. Well, yeah. So I've been a climate activist for quite some time now. I had the opportunity to attend the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro back in 1992, along with a number of other Indigenous peoples, and that's when, on a global level, that's when movement really did start to start occurring, and I think that's where the Kyoto Principles were first talked about, and it was the first time world leaders had gathered to consider what was happening with the atmosphere. And so since that time till now, we've been monitoring the progress of the climate crisis, and working here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, not only with Māori communities but with the wider community. Like most people, we initially intuitively thought, oh well, we'll just go for water security, food security, energy security. We'll remove ourselves from our coastal villages, and we'll move up into higher ground, and we'll take those types of actions, until we realised that individual salvation, if you like, wasn't going to address the systemic issues, and that nobody's really safe unless we're all safe, and that so adaptation is somewhat of a comfort zone for people who don't want to address the causative effects of climate change, and we just can't keep adapting forever, because the effects of climate change will overtake us and overcome us eventually if we don't move to keep the emissions down. So we identified within our country the two major aspects contributing to emissions, which is fossil fuel burning, which is the number one issue internationally. But perversely in our country, it's actually agriculture. But those are the two issues. And so, assuming that agriculture was going to be a longer struggle to uncouple ourselves from a primary economic activity like agriculture was going to take time. However, it was probably strategic for us to not allow deep water oil drilling to establish itself within our waters, because once something's established, it's harder to get rid of, and if you can stop it from getting established in the first place, tactically, that's a better way. You've got more chance of success. So for 10 years, we Te Whānau Apanui started that fight here in Aotearoa against Petrobras, the South American oil exploration company, and so that was back in 2006, I think, maybe before then. And since that time, we've had a 10-year campaign to halt the fossil fuel industry in Aotearoa, which successfully resulted in our current Prime Minister announcing about 2 years ago now that there would be a ban on any future oil exploration in our waters. So that's been the main kind of drive I've been involved in, and together with Indigenous peoples, we've linked up with other Indigenous peoples from around the world whom are fighting those same sorts of battles, just as to offer solidarity, to share tactics, to agree on to identifying maybe core targets and all campaigning on them at once, as opposed to a distributed and unconnected struggle against fossil fuels. So there's that. But one thing I would contribute, I think there's there's a number of climate levers for change, and one of them is governance. So we must have governments like from international governance, the multilateral agreements around the world where all governments come together and agree that we've got to do something, right down to local governance, even in your family. That the heads of the families, the mothers and the fathers, or the uncles and the aunties, or the those that have leadership roles within families need to be taking action, and so we've got to see those who are in decision-making bodies need to be taking action. So that's everything from information, making sure everybody knows what's at stake, the conversations that need to occur about change and what does change look like and how do we get involved in change, to just conversations about what types of societies that we want to envisage, and we've got to be able to imagine those and then work towards them. So there's that sort of thing. There's local and global action. So there needs to be action both at an international level and a local level. Then there's the things like science and technology. There's another lever of change. What are the scientific and technological things that we can start investigating? So it's things like alternative energy, solar power, things like regenerative farming, different ways of agriculture, and so we can't think that there will be a technological fix and somebody's going to invent a machine to suck the carbon out of the atmosphere. It's not that kind of technological change that I'm talking about. I mean, it'd be great if that happens, but we really do need to change the way that we live on the world. And so there's the investment in that type of research and development. And sometimes it's not even new, sometimes it's just going back to practices that have kept human civilizations alive for centuries. And so we've just got to look at how do we adapt those to modern situations. So there's that. Mm-hmm. Then there's the things like the financial systems. How do we empower change? What are the instruments of the economics and finance? And like, for example, I've been working with a group. Now, this might sound a little bit strange in the sense that you've just been watching that program about Davos and all what the world leaders have or have not been doing. Probably more importantly, because quite often there's a lot of it's like cars spinning their tires. There's a lot of smoke, there's a lot of squealing, but there's not actually a lot of forward motion. Mm-hmm. And we see that at the international level quite often, and we see that at the financial systems also. With greenwashing, people sort of like looking like they're doing something, but not actually doing much, or even worse, trying to green up the activities that are causing the damage. And so we've got to be very circumspect about what that is. But having said that, there's also people like Mark Carney, who's the governor of the Bank of England, who has seems to be taking climate change very, very seriously. And so they're doing some interesting things at a macroeconomic level in the UK to support change. Adrian Orr, who's the governor of the Bank of New Zealand, I've been talking to him just lately, and he's wanting to issue like $10 billion worth of climate bonds, which is not shares, so it's not like the capitalist share market system, but it's a derivative of so it's not changing the whole system, which a lot of people advocate for, and I have a very sympathetic view towards. But if that's not going to happen overnight, well, then what are some of the intermediary things that we can do to shift big chunks of funding into things that'll change make systemic change within our economies? And so there's stuff at that economic level that needs to happen as well. So it's and then there's lots of different little chunks where activity needs to happen, and those are some of the entry points. But then there's the roles that people play, and some people, for example, maybe energizers, activists that go out and lead the charge, bang the drum, ring the bell, identify that there's a problem, bring that up to the top of human consciousness so everybody's talking about it and doing something about it. Then there's the early adopters, the people that'll listen, hear the message, and they'll go, okay, I'm going to do something about that. And they might put their energy into one aspect of that, and they model it. They're the exemplars. They prove that it can actually happen. It's not just a theory. They can build something, or maybe the tiny house movement or the solar movement or, regenerative agriculture. They'll start trying to make those things real. Then you've got the maintainers. They might take the view of like, well, you're not going to catch me on a soapbox making great speeches about climate change, and I don't feel like I've got the skills to actually build something that's going to make a difference. But what I can do is sell a few sausages down outside Bunnings and raise some money, or lick a few stamps and slap them onto envelopes, and so they're the people that support the drive or support the campaigns in very practical ways. And then there's all of us, the vast majority of people who, when these new activities become, or we can normalize them by all participating, and make it a fashion trend. It's like, how sheepish we are sometimes when, somebody comes out and says, well, here's the new look, you wear your cap backwards, and then if enough people do it, we all think that it's the thing to do, and we start doing it. And so I think people, musicians, people in the arts, who start to normalize these types of things, and they give expression to them through culture. And then, so when you see the culture shift, and so there's fun and games for all in the climate crisis, and that's quite appropriate because it's going to take an all of society response. So everybody's got a role to play in it, whether or not you're a male, female, old, young. You're working or you're not working, you're an academic or you're a tradesperson, and no matter who you are in the society, we need everybody on board the climate solution pathway. And so so that's just me taking up 5 minutes of your valuable time, just to give you a quick look over of how I see it from where I'm sitting.
It's all on point, Mike. We're really appreciative of you imparting your wisdom from such a lengthy time in the movement to raise awareness, but also actually to do the work. Like you say, there are particular roles within each person's capacity and skill set, ability to contribute, and so we're really keen, especially for the young people, especially for the students here, to kind of do what they feel like they're able. And it was really empowering and inspirational to see the student strike for climate. Was it earlier this year or was it late last year? In any case, yeah. So what do you think about the student strike for climate? Like, they were technically breaking the rules about skipping class and not necessarily.
Yeah, no, there's been a real.
What did you think about that student strike for climate movement of
well, has it frozen?
It might have frozen it at your end, but I think if you just keep talking, if you hear my question,
oh no, it's come back again now. It's just a bit of a break in transmission. So the student strike is really exciting. It's fantastic to see so many young people who kind of get it and are prepared to not just get it, but to do it as well. So there's the getting of it, and then there's the doing of it, and we're starting to see that really start to manifest. Fantastic, and it's great that young people are showing that kind of social responsibility and leadership. So I'm well supportive of it. I guess how that translates into action is quite often politically, and that you'll all be, for young people that are about to turn 18 or have already turned 18, we'll be able to start taking part in elections. And I think if you make it abundantly clear to the politicians of the country that those that take action will be politically rewarded if they're taking real action, and those that don't will be punished. And the way that they'll be punished is through the electoral system. People just won't vote for them, and so we've got to incentivize change to make it one of the things that politicians will really want to put some quality work into. And so we've got to understand that politics is a push me pull you kind of game. You've got forces, for example, who want to maintain the status quo, and they're trying to hold back the government from making progressive steps forward. And so we've got to, I guess, increase the pull from the front to pull governments over, and that we've also got to spend time talking to those that are trying to hold progress back and trying to get them to release, their hold on change, while at the same time, so as young people, have all the incentive in the world to want to do that, because it's your world that we're talking about. When the proverbial hits the fan, it's going to be you guys that are going to have to pick up the pieces for that. So it's important that young people are part of the build in terms of the way things are going to be in the future, because if it breaks, you're going to need to know how to fix it. So the best way to know how to fix something is to be part of the build of it. So I'd encourage young people to really get involved as much as they can in the designing of new systems and the participating in decision making, and development of technology and all that kind of brave new stuff. When I look back sort of 20, 30 years ago, social justice issues were big on the table, and lots of young Māori people in particular were going off and doing law degrees, and economic development was the big thing, and so people were going off and getting MBAs and all that. Well, I think we've got enough lawyers, and I think we've got enough economic wannabes. I think what we need now is we need scientists. We need a lot of earth scientists. So if you're just about to start off a career in university or in further studies as a young adult, I really support. I think that's going to be the area that's going to be a lot of room for growth and development, and there's a big need for lots of earth scientists.
Bye. All right. Hey, Mike, thank you very much for joining us today. We're just about to hit time, but highly recommend, given our kōrero here, if you get a chance to watch Doc Edge Originals. We've got a short about the student climate strike, but then also another one called A Broken Earth about mining and oil and fracking extraction in Taranaki. So that's well worth a watch. Okay. But we're so happy for you to join us here. We hope to catch you for the next session. He mihi nui ki a koe mō te tautoko mai o tēnei kaupapa, me i kiriata hoki.
Tēnā anō koe. And so look, do reach out to me after. I'd like to talk to you guys after this event, actually. So if there's an opportunity to have just a Zoomie between a few of us, I'd be real keen to catch up with you and let you know some of the things that we're doing behind the scenes at the moment.
Ka pai. All right. Well, we'll catch you right after the session. All right. Ka kite, everybody.
Tēnā.